Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to go through how my team did in round 6. Let's get into it. So it was a better round than the last couple rounds this weekend. I ended up getting 2,247 points, ranked in the top 8 for the round, and my season ranking moved up about 11,000 positions to around about 30,000. And I moved back into the top 20%. And I think it was a pretty good round. It was a tale of two halves, definitely, as you saw by the thumbnail. Because you had some people like Butters, Clark, Sheasel, Dacos getting these 140 scores. But then you had others like Bont and Naz dropping stinkers. And so let's go through it line by line. So, starting in the defense, Sinclair, a 119, a return to form after, I think, a pretty woeful, well, not that woeful, 82 from him. This is what we can expect from him. Jordan Clark, this is what we know he's capable of, this 146 score. Hey, it was basically just he didn't drop off. Usually most of his games he gets about 35, 40 points in the first quarter. But I'll bring up footy scores. He didn't drop off. Usually he starts hot and then sort of tapers off towards the end. We look at his quarter splits, 42, 40, 35, 29. He was just consistent for the rest of the game. And this is what his scores could look like. Because if we look at his score last round against the Pies, it started well and then sort of fell off a bit towards the middle. And if we look at his game against the Crows, this was his poor game. Maybe not this one. But if we look at his game against the Tigers, it was a similar thing. He still had a good score. Actually, no, he was pretty consistent through that one. Yeah, like he starts at 50, tapers off. But if we can see this level of consistency from him, we can definitely see this average go up to about 110, 115. Jai Sarong, a disappointing score, especially considering I had Selwood on the bench. And it's a bit worrying now because his break-evens moved up to 64 and he might be a trade out soon, if not this round. Of course, playing a wing, he has potential for those stinker games, but then he also has potential for these massive 126 games. On to Sam Grill. A similar story. I reckon he'll be good for about 66 every single round. It's got him projected that. He'll move up to 320k maybe by the time of the buys, but not a good score. Another not good score was from Lockie Jakes, who has really just hasn't been able to pick up the form, hasn't been able to pick up where he left off and where he started the season at 84 and 80. I'd hope he gets back. Maybe it was just a bit of a rust thing, given he didn't play last round, but worrying nonetheless because he's also got a high break even. Josh Lindsay, though, very, very good score from him. We were all thinking he might have been dead when he got dropped after the Gold Coast game, but he's come back. He's gotten 155 in his last 2 games, and he's got a pretty decent run, especially with St Kilda and Richmond coming up for half-backers. Selwood on the bench was a bit of a mistake, especially after he scored a 74. Not sure what made me do that. Thought maybe Jakes would have the better of him, but he backed up his score from last week. Another one with a -9 break even and should have a lot more cash to make. And Flynn Perez, a very solid third game. Sure, he's chugging along nicely, moved up by 51k, still got a decent negative break even. Now, onto the midfielders. Zach Butters, 154. I thought briefly about putting the VC on him, but then I remembered how well Bont did without a tag really against that Hawthorn midfield, and I thought better of it. And then he went and proved me wrong and dropped 154. Bont, on the other hand, he got clamped, and he's going to be so cheap. Going at a 123 against Sydney, which you know he's going to get 55 against James Jordan, he's going to drop potentially 100k in one round. I think that's what Hugh McCluggage did, and could be a pretty similar thing with Bont because he's just had a hard run, and especially hard run considering he doesn't have his main ruckman. 84, 66 got tagged, and then he's going to get tagged again. If he goes at 75, then he'll drop by 70k, be 580k with a massive break even. And even if he goes 140 against the Dockers, he'll still be 550k. And this is the risk you take with bringing in these players that are really high but should have really high floors. It's that sometimes they drop a bad game, and if they do, they drop 100k with it. And so I think maybe that'll be a thing I'll go with next round, because there have been these value options like LDU, like Max Holmes, who are a lot cheaper than Bont, but still have been averaging pretty much the same. And Bont, they'll always drop, especially with the likes of Sydney, Geelong, North, and Giants tagging, and maybe Melbourne if they tag as well with Colton Tholstrup. All the midfielders will drop in price. Nick Dacos, he did pretty well, 140. A lot of people VC'd him. I wasn't one of those, and I was really wishing I did until later on in the round. He's got an all right run coming up. He's got Essendon at the MCG for Anzac Day, which he should do really well against. Hawthorn at the MCG. Really hard to read how midfielders match up against Hawthorn. Then he's got the double tags of Geelong and Sydney. But then he's got West Coast. And yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag for Dacos, but at 140 score, you'll definitely take that. Got an average of 125. Nazaya Wanganeen-Miller was really disappointing in his game. I watched it from start to finish. And when I heard they were moving Naz to full forward in the dying moments of the game, I was just screaming at the TV, put him in the middle, because he's the man that's going to win you games, and they didn't use him like that. His efficiency was a bit poor. He also got screwed by scaling. And also, Callum Wilkie with negative 33 scaling is criminal. But yeah, Naz, negative 19 scaling, should have been around about that 80, 85 mark. Still not a good score. He didn't get a goal, gave away a couple free kicks, 8 clangers, but ultimately I didn't really get him in to score this matchup. I got him in because of the fact that Sardis did well, and I want his run, because West Coast, Carlton, Gold Coast, 3 very good matchups, maybe not Gold Coast in Darwin. Then you've got Richmond. He's got a very good run, and I wanted to make sure I got him in before then. But I could have gotten him a lot cheaper, and a lot of other people will be able to get him a lot cheaper if he doesn't perform well against West Coast, which I think he should. I think a 140 score would definitely be on the cards. Then against Carlton, they don't tag. They're in a bit shambles. At Marvel, maybe a 120 score. And he should be right back. And you'll also expect a good score against Richmond. So I'm less worried about this score, but it's still really painful. Another painful score is Tanner Bruin. He's so hard to read, this guy. You never know if he's going to drop a 120, a 90, or a 50. And this consistency is really worrying, because I think it's got him projected at about 80, 75, and he's basically maxed out his cash gen. There might be one more round from him, but I think if there is someone a bit of a pricier target that you want to get, he's definitely one you could sack. Tomble Myers and Jacob Farrell, I'll do them both right now on there. Identical scores of 61. Hopefully just a down game from both of them. But Myers' break-even's up to 28. Don't think we should worry, but still a bit concerning. Jacob Farrow, though, break-even only at 4. They're actually pretty similar priced, but Jacob Farrow definitely should be able to get up to that 320 mark. Still got that 102 in his price cycle. Hopefully Essendon do continue to play this sort of chip mark in the back line, because Farrow's been able to benefit very well from that. A very competitive game from Essendon. Farrow didn't actually get that many marks. I think it was a lot of Roberts, Merritt. Merritt's an intriguing one, because because I don't think we have his heat maps anymore. I'm not sure why Footy Scores are not doing that. I'll see if I can get it on DFS Australia because they usually have the heat maps. But Zach Merritt has been very consistent. And he's actually someone I'm really thinking about getting because if we have a look at the heat map here, he's playing a bit down back. Of course, he's got his usual midfield rotation in there, but he's getting a lot more other stats. He's got 9 marks, 8 tackles in a fairly competitive game against a good midfield, you might add, against Rao, Petrarca, and Miller, 2 of which we will touch on later. But he's looking good. He's still pretty decently cheap. At 580k basically, and he's got Collingwood. He should do well. Brisbane. He should also do decently well against Marvel. Giants might get tagged, might not. If Bedford, if they want to use Bedford as sort of a pseudo forward tagger, then they could send him to Roberts, which I would hope they do. Freo, and then you've got Richmond, West Coast, Carlton, Melbourne, North, Saints. Very good run here. So he's definitely one on my watch list. Milan Murdoch came back, picked up where he left off, an 85, very good score. And he rose up by 100k, which is pretty much what Tom McCarthy was able to do in his first couple games last year. Hopefully we can see similar things from Milan Murdoch. Then we get to the bench. Braden Cook with a 99. It was a shame I chose to loop him, or I chose to loop Marshall instead of him. And I forget what order those games happened. I think I was pretty happy with Marshall's score. And so I took that, but Cook came out with a 99. And it was very good because I was actually thinking about trading him. If you watched my trades video from last round, he was on my trade list. But safe to say, he's not anymore. It was a pretty good game from him. 19 kicks, 7 marks. I think a pretty decently crucial goal. A lot of score assists as well. That's really what boosted his score at 90% efficiency. So I think he broke his little Adelaide curse where he scores well at the Adelaide Oval. He was straight 60s until he got this 99. He's got some decently good matchups coming up. Hopefully, it can be one that gets up to about 550k. Oh, sorry, 350k. That'd be amazing if you got to 550. Jagger Smith at 64. It might be time to jump off him because his break-even's getting really high. It's still got him projected at a 78, but my confidence in him reaching that mark is a lot less. Go back to DFS. Go Smith. Go Jagger, actually, because there's a lot of Smiths. If we have a look at his CBAs, they've sort of been declining. He got 54% CBAs this round, which is a lot better. But 23 and 30. Now, him actually getting 54% CBAs, it's giving me a bit of hope that maybe he could get back there, but it's looking worrying. We were really, really hyped about him. Thought he was going to be maybe the cash cow of the year, but it's not looking that way. He had 64% time on ground, which is really what killed him. Didn't really have that many meaties gained. And barely any marks, barely any tackles. Efficiency was a bit of worrying. And yeah, he might be one to go. And Mateus Philippou, an underwhelming score against a very... I thought he played West Coast that game. It was an all right, not all right score against Adelaide. It's really annoying because all these rookies have sort of hit their limit right at the same time, and we can't all get them out at the same time. If we look here, Philippou, 63% time on ground, 40% disposal efficiency. So he was poor with his touches. had 5 CBAs, and how many people are St Kilda sending to the middle? There's 12 people they're using in the middle, which is really not ideal for Supercoach because given that I've got 3 of them, I've got Flanders, who had a very good game we'll touch on later. I've got Naz and I've got Philippou. But yeah, not a good game from Philippou. Going to the rucks, Max Gawn. Very, very far away from that 185 that we were all promised from Supercoach, but I think Richmond is the matchup maybe they were projecting in truth, because this is a matchup against Samson Ryan where he could go ballistic. Then he's also got the West Coast matchup where BJ Williams has been a lot harder to score against, or been a bit harder to score against than Matt Flynn. But yeah, Gawn, an underwhelming score, and he will come down by quite a bit. Similar to what I said about Bont, they will always come down. But he keeps his streak of tons. Luke Jackson, a pretty good score. Would have hoped for a bit more against West Coast, but no, you won't say no to a 125. And then onto the bench, Zane Zakostelski coming from the grave to ruin quite a lot of people's Supercoach scores, because quite a lot of people maybe had Dacos or had Butters or had Sheasel and had chucked the C on Zane Zakostelski and got completely blindsided. Maybe had a Lachlan McAndrew on the bench, and not only did they have to field the 30 captaincy score, but they also lost out on the 79 that Lachlan McAndrew made. I luckily wasn't in that boat because I had Devrob captained, but yeah, it was a very chaotic Sunday afternoon. Speaking of Sunday afternoons, Harry Sheasel had a day out against Richmond. Not quite the extent of his last matchup, but 141. Love that as a vice captaincy score. I took it this time. I didn't give up on it to chase a Luke Jackson score. That would have been horrible if I did. But yeah, very good score. Christian Petrarca, I think he was on track for about 130 at one point, but fell off towards the end there. Still pretty decent for a comeback game, but it's starting to make me think about how we look at Essendon as matchups, because maybe they're not that easy team to score against. So of course, he was looking amazing. He was looking for 130 until the last quarter. But Miller didn't do that well. Rao got 125, but that's not too good. And maybe it's a case that Essendon's not the easy matchup anymore. Because I know I definitely thought he was going to go ballistic against him, but he didn't. And neither did Took Miller, who I'll go on here, get to Cosy Pickett later. 103, finally got back to the tons, got a 100 average. But he's dropped a good 70k since I got him up here. I really bought high, and it's probably something I won't do again. I think a lot of these forward primos from now on, unless you start the likes of a Harry Sheasel and a Christian Petrarca, a lot of them you'll be able to get at about 500k later. And that's something I'll take into next season, because I'm preparing a list of just mistakes I've made this season that I'll work on for next season, and this is one of them. Going to Cosy Pickett, 108 score. A pretty good dependable score against a very decent opponent, but maybe not decent enough, because the Demons came out on top in a bit of a blindsider. And I'll take a moment to touch on the 3 forwards I was considering but didn't go, because Zach Bailey got a 52, and if we look at the Crows, Rankin got a 69 and Rochelle got a 68. All 3 of which I was heavily considering going with. And I had Rochelle for a large portion of the weekend. But then I switched to Naz, who, I mean, he did outscore him by 2 points. But yeah, a lot of people were trading in those forward options. And a lot of those forward options got outscored by Todd Marshall, by Braden Cook. And yeah, it was just not a good day for forward primos. However, Pickett had a pretty good game. And Sam Flanders showed us what he's capable of. That was vintage 2024 Sam Flanders right there. 30 touches at 90%, 567 meters gained, only 76% time on ground, couple marks, couple tackles, couple score involvements, and only 39% CBAs. Very, very good from Marshall. Flanders should have a field day against West Coast, hopefully. And then we had Devrob looping with a player who we definitely knew wasn't going to come back because he's out for the season. And we took Marshall's 76. Very good score, back to what we know he's capable of. Although I didn't watch the game, you would have saw me react to the end of it if you saw my emergency trades video. But apparently his scoring tapered off a bit to the end. He had a good quarter, but then second half just not to be desired. But we know he's capable of 100. And we know he'll eventually get there one day, hopefully. But he's bounced back. Break evens, back low. Leo Lombard chugging along, just giving us a 45 every week. Is pretty much the slow burn Isaac Kako was last year, which isn't ideal, but, is what it is. And then Lachlan McAndrew, the one dependable rookie, where Tom Labies, Jacob Farrow, Jagger Smith, and Braden Cook all drop 60s. Not Lachlan McAndrew. He's good for a solid 80 every week against a matchup where I thought he was going to struggle and maybe get a 50 or so against the double rucks. Of course, I think TDK was injured, but Lachlan McAndrew comes through with a 79. Now we're to trades, and there's quite a few that I've been contemplating. If you saw my post on Twitter, you would have seen that I went with Jagger Smith and Leo Lombard for Angus Anderson and Elijah Sardis, getting purely cashed in because Elijah Sardis has looked very good in his last two games, got a very low break even. But as Yoda says, there is another. And I talked a lot about him before, Zachy Merritt, who I think he might become unobtainable. Or not truly unobtainable next round, but hard for me in my trade plans. Because, actually, I'll go, firstly, before I touch on that, I will go to the trade-in ratings. I'm going to give Naz, I'm going to give him a C- because he was looking good for pretty much the whole game, but then got put out of position. Petrarca, I'll give him a C. Decent, dependable comeback game. Cracked a ton. And then Perez, I'll give a B-. Nothing to write home about, but nothing to be disappointed about. 55. Did a lot better than actually a lot of the Hawthorn forwards in there. And I actually realized I forgot to touch on the bench here because I think I went straight from Sarong to Butters, but Grill, bit of a mech game. Jakes, bit of a mech game. Oh yeah, actually no, I did touch on them. My bad. But yeah, back to Zach Merritt. It might be hard to fit him in my trade plans if I don't get him now, because I will share with you what my plans are. I'll bring up the calculator. There it is. And if I go with these trades, I've got 218, 300 in the bank. Then I'd likely trade out a Sarong and maybe a Jakes. And I'll assume Sarong will go up to 315, but Jakes won't go up. It's 250. And then I'll get in Patrick Rechko, who's at 119k price. And then I will get in, I will minus, and then get in Zach Merritt, who you'd expect will be around about 610, or maybe might be actually a bit more than that. 608k. So I'll just run with 610, which leaves me with 53k going into next round, where I think the target for then would be one Hugh McCluggage. Because Hugh McCluggage had a bit of a stinker at pretty much the perfect time. Against Melbourne, he dropped to 50, dropped by 103k. And, of course, he's probably not going to do this, but he goes to these projected, so he'll get down to 400k. That's not happening. But if he goes at a 110k for the next 2 games, he'll drop to below 500k, which is massive. If he drops 105k, then he drops to 490k. And I'm getting Merritt in before the Brisbane game, and then I'd likely get Hugh McCluggage in after that. Of course, does have a couple tags coming up, but maybe if he's in not that good form, they'll send the taggers to maybe Will Ashcroft if he's doing well, or Dunkley or Neil. There's so many people you could tag for Brisbane. But a part of me does want to get Merritt in now, because Merritt, he'll have a good matchup against Collingwood, and he'll go up by that's not him, but he will go up by a solid 25k. And if McCluggage has a good game, I mean, the good thing with McCluggage and with these set of trades is that he's not going to have that good of a game that I need to get him in next round, because if he goes 150 and then goes 120, he'll only rise up by 20k. If he goes 150, he's still got a break even of 115. I mean, it could very well go another 150, but that's still 542k, which I think if we look at this, I'll get rid of Brill, who maybe be hopefully 305 by that point, will be conservative there. And then I'll add in, could be anyone, could be Bruin actually, at I'll say 390k. Then you minus a 119k rookie. And that gets us to 575. So comfortably we'll be able to get him. And I think upgrade season has well and truly begun. And this is the time when you need to start planning. My apologies. As I was saying, it's upgrade season starting to begin. And this is when you need to start planning for the future. You start planning in how your team's going to look like, what they're going to look like around the buys. And so for my midfield spots, I think we're going to lock in Bont, Butters, Dacos, obviously. Bruin's not going to be here by the end. You're going to have Merritt. You're going to have Hugh McCluggage in these 2 spots in the next 2 rounds. And then I think these 3 I'm reserving for Bailey Smith, Isaac Heaney, and Max Holmes. I think Butters, Bont, Dacos, Merritt, McCluggage, Holmes, Smith, and Heaney will be the top 8 mids. That's at least how it's looking like. Of course, if we look at the midfield, Baz, Butters, Sheasel, or Baz, Butters, we don't include Sheasel, Holmes, Merritt, Bont. Are all how it's looking? Oh no, that's total score. Okay. We've got an average. And I wish you could exclude DPP. But Baz, Heaney, Butters, Dacos, Holmes, Merritt, Bont are the top 7 mids. And then you have to scroll down quite a bit until you get to McCluggage. That should be really low. I'll search him up now. McCluggage has a 50 average, but he's not going to stay that way. Obviously, we know what he's capable of. He was the 3rd highest midfield scorer for a reason, because he's capable of these scores. And hopefully, if he can find his form back in the next couple games, I'd like to see a spike score against Essendon. But he could be a very serviceable M8 at that price. And then I've been looking at various runs, and I think, because I think I'm going to focus on the midfield for now, and I'll just sort of nab the defensive primos when I can. If you look at the Geelong run for both Bailey Smith and Max Holmes, it's decently daunting. You've got a bunch of pretty good teams up here. One of them will cop James Jordan. One of them will cop Finn O'Sullivan if he's back. But I think it will be useful to get them in by their bye, because my round 16 bye is quite horrible. It's got Naz, Sinclair, Bont, Gorn, Pickett, Flanders. I'm assuming Flanders is going to be a keeper just for simplicity now, but he might not. And then you add 2 more to that. Of course, Bruin's not going to be there. Jakes isn't going to be there. If you add 2 more to that, that's 8, and that's no bueno. That's not good. And so I think maybe I'll try to get in 1 before the bye, because it is pretty spread out as well. It's 2 in the back. If I got 1, it'd be 2 in the midfield, 1 in the ruck, 2 in the forward line, which you can cover from the bench if you've got good rookies. And the rookies are looking pretty decent. But the other one I'd get after their bye. And so then I'm looking at, how do I get Isaac Heaney? And I know I've clicked Brody Grundy, but Heaney is pretty similar. You've got pretty hard runs. You've got a hard midfield matchup. And this is part of the reason I didn't try to get him in last round. I'll actually go and look at him so we can see his prices, because he was 632 last week. Probably should have gotten him in at that price, at 588 after the 156. It was a bit price chasing, and he did have a daunting run, which he's still in the midst of. Gold Coast, we thought it was going to be a hard matchup. Giants, he got sort of tagged by Bedford. Still scraped the ton, but it was less convincing. Then he's got the Dogs, notoriously hard matchup, especially if the likes of English is back. Got Melbourne, might get Tholstrup. North might get Finn O'Sullivan. Then he's got Collingwood, which would be a good matchup. Then you get O'Shea Mullen at Geelong, which is pretty daunting. Let's say he goes at 115s for these matches. Then he gets down to basically 605. If he gets hard tagged in this matchup, maybe gets an 85. Gets restricted in this matchup, still goes 105. But then, given the benefit of the doubt against Collingwood, goes 125. That drops to 590. And then he's got a break even of 143 coming up then. And I'll back him in to beat that. And I'll back him in to get him for this Richmond matchup when a lot of people's teams will be ravaged by the likes of having Butters, Petrarca. If we look at round 12, Butters, Sheasel, Petrarca, LDU, maybe Rochelle and Rankin, which I probably won't have by then. And I'll take advantage of that Richmond matchup against Sydney, where we've seen people scoring well. We got Harry Sheasel scoring well last round. And if we look at who Richmond have versed in the past, I think Callahan got 130. Butters would have done well, I'd assume. Yeah, Richmond is looking to be a very good midfield matchup, especially given now a lot of Richmond's mids, like you had Tim Taranto just got injured. He'd probably be back by that matchup. But back then, okay, back to, sorry, I'm getting a bit sidetracked and this is dragging on for a bit of a while. But I think at that point, I'll be looking to get rid of Lachlan McAndrew because he'll be on his bye. At that point, if we got him going 86s, he'll get pretty much up to 420. If we bring up the calculator, Isaac Heaney at, I'll go 615K to be generous, plus 420, plus, oh, no, minus 420 actually. So it's 420 minus 615. And then, okay, 420 minus 615. I can do this math in my head. It gets to 195. 195,000. And basically, I need to get a 300K primo, knock him down by that round 12 buy. So hopefully someone like a Josh Lindsay or a Todd Marshall be at that price. Maybe even a Fawn Perez if he keeps his spot. Then looking at the defender primos, because I've got 3. I got Nazin and I only had 2 and it was looking a bit bare there. But these could go anyway because there are so many people that are in good runs of form and we just don't know if they're going to stay. You've got Luke Parker, who is averaging 117, top of the defender primos. Jack Sinclair, I've got him. He'll probably be D1. Cal Wilkie is a very good pot option. Archie Roberts had a downish game last game, but he's still been looking very, very good, very consistent tons. Then you got Lockie Ash, who had a down game but has been looking very good. He's one that I could nab in a couple weeks because, especially with that low game, the 85 against Sydney, he's looking very gettable. And if I can get him in before that West Coast matchup, that'd be amazing, especially given how cheap McCluggage would be because, of course, I'm getting Merritt in there, then McCluggage, then hopefully Lockie Ash during this period. He'll be one to get because he might be around about that 530k. Of course, you'd expect him to go maybe 110 against North. Might cop a bit of attention, but 550k, you'll get him at that price. That's a pretty fair price to pay for him. Josh Worrell, I'm not sold on yet. He is just capable of a stinker. Of course, that was a very wet game. Then you got Jordan Clark, who hopefully he can continue this run of form. You've got Carlton, West Coast, or Western Bulldogs, Hawthorn, Essendon, Saints, all should be decent matchups. Then you got Lockie Whitfield, and Lockie Whitfield is interchangeable with Lockie Ash because they could really go either way. Then I think these 8 are really the only I'm considering. I don't think there's anyone who's ridiculously underpriced. So, of course, you've got Naz down there. And so if I can get 3 more of these guys, I'd be looking at maybe Lockie Ash, Archie Roberts, and I'd take a Cal Wilkie because he's a pretty decent pot option. You've also got someone who scored very well on the weekend. He's not defensive eligible yet. Of course, he's a forward line player. Cam Zerha got 140. I'm not jumping on it yet. I want to see one more match. But he looked very, very good. He was accumulating the ball at will. Sucks for McKercher owners because McKercher is now a dead pick. I mean, he got 80, but, you want a lot more from him. Cam Zerha, 18 touches, 11 marks, pure ethical footy. He did get scaled quite a bit. But then he's also the guy that they could swing forward for like 3 minutes and he could kick a clutch goal. So shout out to Jack Ross. Very good score there. But yeah, Zerha is an interesting one. But of course, obviously not one I'll be going because I think I'm going to stick with these trades. I've talked myself into it. Going Anderson, Sardis. I think Sardis has played a very good role in the midfield in the 2 games he's played. And there have been 2 games where Essendon have won and also looked very competitive in. And I think hopefully they'll keep this role. I'll get Merritt in next round, and then hopefully he can do pretty well. I'll hold him up to maybe his buy round 15, and then I could free up a lot of cash then, trading him out and saving up for maybe a double upgrade to Baz and Holmes by that point. And so I think that'll be it for this video. Of course, I'll optimize the team, just set it up. I mean, early captaincy looks, of course, they might change. Gorn VC seems pretty obvious given they're playing on Friday. You could go with a Nakos Nakos C against Essendon and Anzac Day, but I'm going to go with a Naz captain against West Coast. Could go with Jack Sinclair though. He has been more reliable, and you want your captaincy to be reliable and your VC to be more of a swing. Of course, Gorn is a very big swing against Richmond, and it could be a very good score because, of course, I mean, he's got monster scores against everyone, but these last 2 scores are 174, 162. Those were probably against Nank. Now he's against a much more inferior ruckman in Samson Ryan. No offense, Samson Ryan. But I think that's what I'll look at for now. Of course, Selwood is going to come on field for Jakes. Grill is probably going to come on field for Sarong. I need to see a bit more from him. And then I am going to loop probably Marcus Bonson Pelly. I'm going to try and swing some things around here. I'm going to see if I can swing Marcus Bontempelli with maybe Todd Marshall or maybe Zach Butters, because both Bont and Butters are copying hard tags. Of course, if Bont scores a good score, then it allows me to use a loophole. If it doesn't, I'll wait out for Marshall and see if he does well. Or maybe I'll take the Sardis score. Or I could do both, because, of course, I could just move Devrob here, and then I could do a secondary loop with Todd Marshall. And this is why I like keeping Devrob, because he allows me to be really sneaky with these VCs, because, of course, Bont has a bad score, then yeah, I can move Sardis on field. Then I can swim Devrob down with Philippou, moving him into the midfield, and loop between two other players, and basically get the best score of 3 or 4 players. And this is probably how the team's going to go. I'll delve in a bit more in my official trades video if I make a change, if I decide I really need to get Merit now. That'll probably come out on Thursday. And until then, of course, like, subscribe if you think I'm making good trades. Comment your trades thoughts down below. And with that, I will see you in the next one. Happy coaching.